Hello, hi, welcome to my channel. I'm trying out a mic today, so excuse the fact that I will be holding this the entire intro. But if you have never been here before or you've never seen me, hi, my name is Fariha. I go by Fairly Odd Fariha here on YouTube, and I am going to be starting a series where I give you some seasonal reading roundups. So basically every book that I read during a specific season. For this video, we're going to be combining fall and winter because I never got around to doing this over on TikTok. I started doing these on TikTok around like a year and a half or 2 years ago maybe, when my reading habits started to kick back into gear and I was feeling pretty good about actually giving people a list of books that I was reading. In this video you'll be seeing over 30 books and comics that I have read. I have them like a huge stack over here off screen, and most of them I would say are comics that I have with me, and a lot of the books I read through the library app that I use and through Libro FM, which I will talk about in this video. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the video. It's going to be a long one. There's going to be a lot of discussions throughout, and I will tell you when I've discovered some of my favorite authors. There are at least 2 in here who I am now dedicated fans of the author themselves. So I hope you enjoyed the video. All of the links will be below, as well as some timestamps for where you will find each of these books. And it'll also be like a list in case you want to see what I talk about. There are some spooky books in here, spooky comics, there's some sad stuff, there's some memoirs, there's some interesting horror comics. So I hope you like them. I hope you enjoy the list. If you've read some of these before, let me know down below. And if there are any that you don't really like that much, also let me know. I really love those conversations. Anyway, let's just get started. Let's get right into the video. I'm going to be wearing something completely different in the next clip, and I will probably have different energy because it will be a completely different day. Okay, bye-bye. Hello, and welcome to a completely different day. Now, before we get to the actual list, as you know there are a lot, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a rundown of how my star rating system works, because I feel like that's going to be some important information to really get into it. Okay, we're gonna do like the whole rating system. Okay, so there's a 5-star, there's a 4.5 star, 4 stars, 3.5 stars, 3 stars, and then 2 and 1, because I don't do 2.5 stars. I think that's pointless. So let's get into it. So to me personally, a 5-star book is based on rereadability. If this is a book that made me feel either really good feelings or really awful feelings, and I will find enjoyment or pain rereading it after a few years, it's a 5-star book. Usually it's an author that I like a lot, but also sometimes a 5-star book will just sneak up on me. It'll be something that I'm not even slightly familiar with, and that's always fun. And likely it'll be a book where none of the main characters die. I don't usually give out 5 stars to a book where they kill off the main character. There are a few exceptions, but I do get serious about that. You will see what I mean in a minute. But yeah, a 5-star book is like, it's just, I can always point to it. I can always recommend it to people. When people ask me what my favorite books are, I will always have a list ready to go. Now, a 4.5 star book is a 5-star book where they killed off a main character. Literally, that is what it is. There are some books out there that are amazing, incredible to me personally, but because they killed off the character, I literally put it down 0.5 star. That's enough. That'll do it for me. Like, if you did that, why did you do that? I didn't appreciate it. I didn't see it coming, usually, and I'm not happy. I'm not happy about it. You will see a few of those in this video. Also, 4.5 stars a book, if I don't go off of that, I will go off of the fact that it was almost perfect. There was almost everything about it that I loved, but it's not a book that I'm going to reread. That will also put it down to a 0.5 star if I'm being fully serious. I do love rereading books, and I do it every few years for some series that like I will always love dearly, but lately a lot of books fall into this 4.5 star category for those reasons. The next rating is a 4-star book. 4-star books are ones that, again, almost perfect. I genuinely had a good time reading the book. I have a feeling that I could recommend this to people pretty easily, pretty well. I like the author a lot maybe, but the book itself fell flat. That happens to me quite often because I do tend to pay attention to the authors as much as I'm paying attention to the story. It used to not be true when I was younger because I just didn't know I didn't know what I was reading, I just read books. But nowadays, it is very important to me who is behind the books that I'm reading. So, a 4-star book is one that, it was good, I could recommend it. Will I reread it? Probably not. Will I say it's my favorite series? Probably not. I might not even talk about it ever again. A 3.5-star book. Is that where we're at? A 3.5-star book. I had to think for a second if I'm there. I think I am there. A 3.5-star book is one where I don't even like the author that much. Genuinely, it made a difference in the reading experience, and I wouldn't recommend it to people. It's a book where it's like, wow, you got me to read this. I'm almost impressed by that, but the writing and the world building is probably bad, not that great, and forgettable. A 3-star book is also one that I'm begrudgingly giving you that rating. Most likely it's a 2-star book, but if I'm giving it 3 stars, maybe I believe in the author, maybe I believe in the work, and maybe I'm actually interested in the story, but like, I'm never gonna reread it, I'm never gonna recommend it to people, and I don't actually think that it was the best, but like, for me personally, I got through it and I'm impressed, so you get 3 stars. Now, a 2-star book and a 1-star book, there are distinctions. A 2-star book is one where it's like, I read the whole book and I hated it. I read that book and I wish you didn't do that. It's really annoying that you did that. 2 stars. These are ones that would fall under the bad representation category. Like, you made a character who could have been something, but ended up being a caricature, and I don't like that. Or some aspect of the world building falls flat in a way that's like, it actually affected the reading of this book, so no, that's no good. Those will be a 2-star book. It's like genuinely bad. Like, when I look back, I'm like, oh my god, that was a bad book. 2-star books are just books that like, I wish I hadn't read, basically. Now, a 1-star book, it is very rare that I give out a 1-star rating, but I have before. I've never given a book 0 stars. I have like just not given a book any stars, because some books I think exist off my personal scale. But for a 1-star book, it's one where it's like, I think this was genuinely harmful. The tropes in it were not good, and I wish it didn't exist. Like, I wish that you hadn't done that. It's annoying to me that you did it. I wish that never happened, but here we are. 1-star book. It's a book that I hate. Like, I read it. I probably didn't finish it completely. But like, I have to read a book fully in order to fully hate it, so I probably did hate read it anyway. I can think of a book series off the top of my head that is a 1-star immediately. It makes me so sad whenever I think of that book, because it's so harmful. And I wish that author would stop writing. But anyway, that is my star rating system. So you will see that come up throughout the video. I'm going to leave the star rating on the screen. But yeah, let's just get right into it. This part got pretty long. We are going to start strong with a book that I finished September 1st of 2022, which was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Now, this is the beginning of a trilogy. This is a high fantasy series that takes from a lot of Chinese mythology and history to create a world that is very complex, honestly. There's a lot of politics involved, and there are a lot of characters who are kind of grounded in real world history. And you can tell there was a lot of careful effort put into how R.F. Kuang built this world. Poppy War introduces our main character, who is Rin, who is very specifically described as somebody who has darker skin, a darker complexion. Rin is an orphan and in a terrible home situation, basically. Is going to be sold off to marriage to this guy who sucks and is gross, but she works really hard and gets accepted into this really highly acclaimed academy called Sinigard, where you train to be in the army, you train to be a warrior, you train to be like a very heartless fighter. And so she goes into that and works her ass off throughout the whole entire book. Most of this book, I would say some of it is kind of a slog to get through, because you are just there for like a training sequence where she goes through, like, once she picks what subsect she's in at Sinigard, she has to go through this like huge training process, and it like takes a long time to get through, but you can tell it's very necessary. And obviously this is just the start of her journey. You learn very quickly that she's an extremely heartless character. I've heard her compared to Azula. Like, if Azula was the main character of a story and we were following her life through her perspective completely, there's something similar there. Personally, I disagree. I think that Rin comes from nothing, and she genuinely just doesn't want to be forgotten and doesn't want her life to be for nothing, and does everything in her power to make herself, like, make something of herself. And so she does things that to others might seem very unconventional or very intense, but I think when you take into account her background and take into account the fact that no one believes in her and everyone has been extremely either racist or colorist or just sexist, generally very dismissive of her existence, then you can see why she chooses to do the things that she does. She is like a very brutal person, and she does commit a lot of harm throughout the books. I just read the second book recently this year, but in this first one, I mean, you learn a lot about her motivation, so you kind of start rooting for her very quickly. And I personally love this character. She's definitely one of my favorite female protagonists that I have come across ever. And I really enjoyed reading this book, but it is very heavy, it is very dark. There are parts of this that kind of describe in detail like genocide and the effects of war and sexual violence, different aspects of war that come up and that she does not shy away from. And at the back of this book, she does give you some further context and details as to what it was she was using her fantasy to have a commentary on, which I personally appreciated because I don't really like that to come up in my fantasy books, but when it does, I do appreciate when an author makes it very intentional. And Kuang is nothing if not a very intentional writer, and I think did all of this brutal work very beautifully. I say brutal every time I mention anything by Kuang because like it really is trying to get you to think differently. Her books in general are just like that. So I highly recommend it. I do think it was very good. I did end up giving it a 5-star, even though I think there is a character death in the first book. Yeah, there's like a fake death moment. I don't know if that's a spoiler. I'm gonna try my hardest to keep these spoiler free, by the way. But yeah, check the content warnings, engage with those. Be mindful about what you're starting when you get into the Poppy War series because it is intense, and I would absolutely reread the series once I get through the third one. The second one, oof, that one is crazy. Now the next book that I read, I think I needed something pretty lighthearted, so I started picking up a comic. I read The Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill. I have heard a lot about this author, and I've heard a lot about this whole series, and the thing was that when I first went into it, I thought that it was written by someone who's a person of color because a lot of the main characters in it are beautifully diverse, and there's a lot of very beautiful characters in the story. It's a very sweet story. There's like a whole dragon magic system that goes on, and it's very like light magic, but you can tell why it's won so many awards. It came out in 2017, and I think it did get an Eisner in 2018, which was really cool. But yeah, the author seems really interesting, and I really like the world building and everything. I personally gave it a 3.5 stars, simply because I just didn't know it was written by a white person. And sometimes there are stories that I think write about Black joy, or that write about other people of color in joyful situations, and like I get happy when I see them, but I personally would love to see them more from different perspectives. So that's why I gave it a 3.5 stars. Would I reread it? Maybe. Possibly. Totally, entirely possible. But I know it's a lot of people's faves, and for good reason. It's a very beautiful comic, but for me it was 3.5 stars. The next book I read was actually a memoir. It was the only memoir that I think that I read in all of 2022 that wasn't a graphic memoir, called Punch Me Up to the Gods by Brian Broome. This one is about a gay youth who has a very difficult life. It goes through all of the aspects of his life growing up in Ohio as a dark-skinned Black boy harboring crushes on other boys and having a very toxic home life and toxic family. It talks a lot about masculinity, and it talks a lot about that within gay communities, and I think that it's done very well, and I do recommend that you would read it through the audio narration, which is how I did it. It's very raw, and it's got a lot of elements in there that are like, I think, very difficult to read, especially when you're seeing like child abuse. Not something that everybody has a stomach for, but I was really ready for it. I was ready to get into it, so I went for it, and it was really good. There's a huge commentary in there about vulnerability for young Black boys especially, and it's like a conversation point that I think I only ever see happening around like queer communities. Especially, they seem to be at the forefront of that conversation, especially when it comes to critiquing masculinity in general. So I really appreciated it. I thought it was really well done, and I would seriously suggest everybody read it. It's very good. September must have been a really good reading month for me because I finished this on the 13th of September in 2022. This is How You Lose a Time War by Max Gladstone and Amal El-Mohtar. I can definitely be very general about this, but I want to tell you guys what this book is about because this is a 5-star book, and it is very confusing, to be fully honest. I see this as people's faves for good reason, because I did read this and I was like, oh, that's something. I don't actually know very well how to describe it to anyone who has never picked it up, so I'm just gonna read what it says here on the interwebs, okay? This is described as a romance novel spanning time and space about two time-traveling rivals who fall in love and must change the past to ensure their future. Which on the front sounds like a thing that makes sense. The whole thing is told as a correspondence between two rival agents who are hell-bent on securing the best possible future for their warring factions. So there's like this side and that side. I believe there's just, I think it's blue and red, I'm pretty sure. Red belongs to the agency and blue belongs to the garden. So one of them is like this hyper-tech sort of machine thing, and then the other one is more of like a organic matter consciousness thing. So it's not like they have like actual physical bodies that I can imagine in my brain, but also like I can imagine them and I don't know how to describe what I'm seeing in my head. But yeah, the whole entire story is told through, like, I would say it's letters, but it's not exactly letters, because they write these notes to each other in different ways across time and space that only they would be able to decipher for one another. And slowly their relationship builds, and slowly the intensity of their relationship builds, because these two fall in love in a way that like feels very cosmic. There's a lot to it that feels almost like bigger than who they both are as individuals. There's definitely like a meta commentary going on among them, like among their correspondence. It's won a lot of awards for good reason. It's a very interesting book and very interestingly done. I've never read anything like it, but I will say like elements of it did remind me of Doctor Who. Randomly, I haven't watched Doctor Who in many years, but I randomly got a flashback to a River Song episode where she was leaving messages to the Doctor in weird ways that only the Doctor was going to see, on like giant cliff sides and at the end of the universe and stuff. Like, it's like that level of intensity, like a huge, only people who are like have some dominion over time would even see or understand, you know? So I think it's beautiful. I think it's incredible. It's so short. There's so much in it. It is one of the best lesbian sci-fi stories I've ever read, that's for sure. And I do recommend it. It is a 5-star book. After finishing that book, I decided to reread something I read back in 2021 that my sister had told me about. It's called Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I think the next book has been announced already, and there is a cover and everything. And I've seen the UK cover for this book and it's so nice. It's so good. But yeah, another lesbian story. This one is like a high fantasy story of a worn out orc barbarian who decides to like put up her life of crime and, you know, swashbuckling. She's not a pirate, sorry. And decides to open a cute little cafe, basically, in a world where they don't, like, she does it in a town where no one's ever heard of coffee, and she does it with like her entire life savings of like being a mercenary. And it's very cozy. It is one of those books that is really good to read around the winter time. I liked it. I thought it was good. I gave it 4 stars. It's probably more like a 3.5 star if I'm being fully honest. And I don't know if I'm going to read the next book by this author, but I do appreciate cozy fantasies existing, so I really liked it. I had not read anything like it before picking up this book, but now that I've read more things that are in the cozy fantasy like space, this might just be my only one from this author. The love story in this, by the way, comes in when she gets help from somebody in town who is a succubus, I believe. She becomes like a part of this little place that she's trying to start, and it's like, it's very cute. The romance in it is cute and not overdone or anything, and I like the descriptions of food. Food in high fantasy is always fun to me, so this is very good. It's very cute. If you want a cozy fantasy, this is certainly one. I just read my personal review for this next one, and I was so scathing about it. Oh my gosh. I recommend this book to people all the time. It's called Life from Uncommon Stars by Ryka Aoki, which is about... It's about some weird stuff, okay? This is one of those weird, funky sci-fi books. It's got a few different main characters. So, this one is set in California's San Gabriel Valley. It's got cursed violins, Faustian bargains, and queer alien courtships over freshly made donuts. That's how the people describe it. We have 3 main characters, or I guess kind of 2. Shizuka Satomi, who makes a deal with the devil to escape damnation, she has to entice 7 other violin prodigies, because she is a violin teacher and prodigy herself, to trade their souls for success, basically. And she's already delivered 6, and then she finds her 7th, and her 7th victim is Katrina Nguyen, who is a young trans runaway, and she catches Shizuka's ear just by playing the violin out in the park somewhere. And the two end up in a relationship where she becomes her mentor and is like basically preparing her for success and all that, but also is like teaching her how to love herself because she's been through a lot, like she's been through hell. That relationship starts up, and then we have Lan, who runs a donut shop, which is actually an alien spaceship, and her family are running this shop, and they're also like on the run from intergalactic like space stuff. So Lan and Shizuka Satomi get into a relationship in this like budding romance. Katrina is learning to love herself, and personally I think the reason that I had issues with it when I first read it is that I thought there was just too much going on. I thought that the demon deal didn't fit in with a alien space story, or the main protagonist being Katrina, who is such an endearing character and who is so beautiful and who I loved so much. I just felt like there was too much going on around her to have the focus just be on Katrina. It would have been stronger to me personally. I thought that was where it was lacking. I just felt like there was way too much focus on Shizuka Satomi, who was a very confusing character to me because we never really learn how she gets caught up with this demon in the first place. Just learn about like basically her at the end of her rope. You know, she's about to be taken for this deal thing that she did years ago, and you don't fully understand why she did it. I don't know. I was confused. I thought there was too many elements going on, too many things in the balance, but I also kind of don't care. I still recommend this book to people because I think that there's a lot of interesting things going on, and there's an interesting trans main character in a sci-fi setting, and we need to see more of that in general. So I appreciate what Ryka Aoki was doing with this character, and plus the storytelling is actually like, it gets so beautiful in random places in a way that like shocked me to my core. Like there would be moments where they would be describing Katrina's like love for playing the violin and how she's just learning to love herself that were just so, oh my gosh, gut-wrenching, gorgeous, beautiful. And then there would be like descriptions of the donuts. I randomly got really into donuts around this time, and I like went on a search for like gluten-free, dairy-free donuts around my area because I haven't had a donut in like 5 years or something. And so I actually did find a place, and I started going to that donut shop all the time after reading this book. So I did have a donut obsession at the time. But yeah, it's a good book. I gave it 3.5 stars. I kind of want to bump it up to a 4 now that I'm just talking about it and like remembering everything about that book. But I just know that my reading experience was pretty negative at the time. I thought that like all the characters were just too much. It just felt like too much. Maybe too much is what Ryka Aoki was like aiming for. Maybe that's what I'm missing in it. Maybe. I don't know. I'd recommend it still. I'm gonna keep it at 3.5 stars, but if I reread it, we'll see what happens, honestly. But it's a really cool, weird sci-fi story. That much I cannot argue. Okay, the next ones we're going to be talking about are all my October spooky time reads. Again, a lot of these I don't have physically, and it's genuinely because I read everything through my library app, including this next one, which is Certain Dark Things by Sylvia Moreno-Garcia. This is the first one of her books that I read. Sorry, Sylvia Moreno-Garcia. This is the first one of her books that I've ever read. She has been on my radar for a while, especially for Mexican Gothic, which I do end up reading. But I wanted to read a vampire story. I was just in a vampire place. I was like, I think that I need a vampire story. So here's the pitch, okay? Welcome to Mexico City, an oasis in a sea of vampires. Domingo, a lonely garbage collecting street kid, is busy eking out a living when a jaded vampire on the run swoops into his life. I don't know how to say her name. It's A-T-L. Adel, the descendant of Aztec blood drinkers, must feast on the young to survive, and Domingo looks especially tasty. Smart, beautiful, and dangerous, Adel needs to escape to South America, far from the rival narco-vampire clan pursuing her. And Domingo is smitten, and her plan doesn't really include any attachments, but you know, things happen for this, especially with this scrappy young man just like being so wholesome on the side. It's the dynamic is funny, okay? It's hilarious. I love it. And then there's also a cop character who is trying to find her, and there's like there's vampires, there's humans, there's cops, there's gangsters. It's all happening in Mexico City. It is a really good book. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. One thing that I really love about this book is that this is like completely non-European vampires. They're mentioned in this book, but they're mentioned as something distinctly different. These are vampires that specifically come from an Aztec lore of vampires, and that's basically what this book is meant to be, is like introducing you to different type of vampires. There is a whole section at the end of this book where Sylvia Moreno-Garcia gives you a list of different vampires and their history and how they relate to one another from different regions of the world. And it's so cool. It is so interesting. I was immediately in love with the vampire system, and I was immediately obsessed with finding more vampire stories that were non-European centered. I was really into that at the time. And so I loved this book. I thought it was really good. I feel like the only thing that I wish is that it wasn't so straight. Like, whenever there's like too much of a straight romance in a fantasy book, I get bored and I almost drop it. And I almost did drop this book, which is why it's a 4-star and not like 4.5 or something. Just because like I thought that the concept around it was really strong, but the story itself was like a little lacking, a little bit meh, like a little whatever. This one came out in like 2016, so it's not one of her more recent works, but it's very cool. It's very interesting. I'd say give it a shot for sure. The next one I have right here, it's called Seance Tea Party by Reimena Yee. This is such a cute little... I gave it 5 stars because I'm absolutely going to reread this. I did not expect to love it so much. It literally made me cry. What power does this have over me that it made me cry? It's very cute. It's about this main character. Her name is Laura, and she wants to stay a kid forever. She'll do anything to make that happen, including befriending Alexa, who is the ghost that haunts her house. It's a middle grade graphic novel, and it's about growing up, and it's super, super sweet and adorable. I liked it a lot. I thought the Seance Tea Party element was so cute in like a horror kid kind of way, which I definitely was one of those. Like, I love these type of books. I think they're very spooky and adorable, and if you like things like Coraline, or you liked Corpse Bride as a kid, or you liked Monster House, you'll like this. This is very good. I really appreciated it. And the art in this is very nice. I thought that it was like very sweet for a middle grade, and like there was a lot more detail in it than I expected. But middle grade novels have a way of surprising you, I think. There's like a lot of potential in a middle grade graphic for sure, and like you can always play around with the medium in different ways, especially when you have like a ghost character, and this author definitely did that. So love this, love this comic. Absolutely would recommend it. It's so sweet. Now the next one that I have for you is called Witches by Brenda Lozano. This is such a good novel. It was translated from Spanish to English, and I seriously don't see enough people talking about it. I was recommended this one by an account over on TikTok. I had just recently started following this account, and she specifically recommends Latinx books, and at the time was recommending a lot of Latinx horror books and just like scary books in general, and this one came up. It is so good. Oh my gosh, I read this as an audiobook. I gave it 4.5 stars, and here's the description. The beguiling story of a young journalist whose investigation of a murder leads her to the most legendary healer in all of Mexico, from one of the most prominent voices of a new generation of Latin American writers. Plot. Paloma is dead, but before she was murdered, before she was even Paloma, she was a traditional healer named Gaspar. Before she was murdered, she taught her cousin Feliciana the secrets of the ceremonies known as the Velidas, and about the language of the book that unlocks their secrets. Sent to report on Paloma's murder, Zoe meets Feliciana in the mountain village of San Felipe. There, the two women's lives twist around each other in a danse macabre? I don't know how to say that word. Macabre. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to say that damn word. Feliciana tells Zoe the story of her struggle to become an accepted healer in her community, and Zoe begins to understand the hidden history of her own experience as a woman finding her way in a hostile environment shaped by and for men. It weaves together 2 parallel narratives because we get the past when she was alive, when Paloma was alive, and we also get the present with Zoe. And this novel, it envisions a healer as a storyteller, a writer as a healer, and offers a generous and nuanced understanding of a world that can be at turns violent and excellent, cruel and full of hope. What a description, am I right? This is such a beautiful story and has such an endearing main character of Paloma. I believe Paloma is the main character even though we are investigating her murder, but like when we go back to her past and see how she discovered herself as a trans woman and tries to be everything for everybody. It is such an endearing story. It also is a story of womanhood and about like witchcraft and how different that is in a place like Mexico, where there is an established history there and culture when it comes to different types of colanderas, I believe is what healer is called. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this story is just so well written. It's so well done. I really appreciated the investigator character because I think she was kind of on a journey of self-discovery herself, so going through this and like having to rehash all of this terribleness was like hard and difficult, of course, but it was like the journalistic integrity is definitely there. But this book is just so beautiful. It is really short. It's not very long. It's like around 240 pages, but it packs a punch. Some of the craziest stories I've ever read are less than 300 pages. This was one of them. I highly recommend it. Next one that I read is My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite, and I did this as an audiobook. The narrator's name is Adepro Aduye, and this was a 4.5-star book. It is also another very short one. Took 4 hours-ish to read it. It came out in 2018 and it's been on my radar since 2020, I would say. I'm so glad that I read it. It is so good. So our main character's name is Corday, and she is basically the younger sister who takes on the burden of like her entire family, and especially her sister being as crazy and wild as she is. Ayula is many things. She's a favorite child, the beautiful one, and possibly a sociopath because she keeps murdering her ex-boyfriends. Her current boyfriends as well. Her sister just keeps helping her clean up the mess every time. There's like a lot of hilarious elements to it for me personally, but also like when it comes to sisterhood, I think there's not a lot of books that like do sisterhood very well, and this one does. I really like their relationship to each other. It made sense to me. And our main character is a nurse. She's going through it at her job all the time, and then she also has a crush, and that crush becomes her sister's crush, and then she's scared that that crush is going to be murdered. There's a lot of that in here, but it's a really fast read. It's really good. I highly recommend it. It's hilarious as well in some ways. In a dark sort of way, it's hilarious to me anyway. We'll definitely be reading any other books that come out by this author. This next one is called The Magic Fish by Trung Nguyen, and I don't know if I ever wrote a review about it. I hope I did. I said beautiful storytelling, amazing style, made me cry, would recommend. 5 stars. All of those things are true, but essentially this is the story of Tien, who is this young kid that's like trying to find a way to tell his mom that he's gay. So his mom is like learning English and is always reading fairy tales with her son, and the story weaves those fairy tales into the narrative, so we get those stories and then we also get the present. It's just very endearing and wholesome, and I really recommend it. I like the relationship between mother and son. I thought it was very cute, and also just Tien's like little worries. I just love YA graphics. They're so sweet and there's so much that can be done in them. This is a good way of describing it. Tien enjoys reading his favorite stories with his parents from the books he borrows from the local library. It's hard enough trying to communicate with your parents as a kid, but for Tien, he doesn't even have the right words because his parents are struggling with their English. Is there a Vietnamese word for what he's going through? Is there a way to tell them he's gay, but in Vietnamese, but also in English? Ugh, it's so sweet. It's so beautiful. Read it. It's a good one. Since it was still October, I decided to pick up Coraline by Neil Gaiman. I never read the book, even though I've had it, apparently, for years. It's just been sitting on the shelf. It's word for word what happens in the movie. It's the same thing. There's a couple notable differences, I would say, but mostly it's the same thing. I don't even think I reviewed it. I just read it in like one sitting, and I was like, good. Very good. I never found Coraline to be particularly creepy. I was a Coraline fan as a child. Loved that movie. It was the best. I dressed up as Coraline for Halloween a couple times. Even dyed my hair blue at one point with like spray paint that I got from Party City, of course. Yeah, no, I liked it a lot. It's good. It's good for spooky time too because it's very short. But I see how people think it's creepy. I don't think that Coraline's creepy. Maybe I'm weird for that. I don't know. Another book that made me bawl my eyes out. I've never read an Ocean Vuong book before, but I have read excerpts and little bits of poetry over like the course of my life at some point in time, but I did get this one and decide to go through it. I gave it 4 stars, and I think I did this as an audio, even though I do have the physical copy as well. I don't know what that was about. But in this deeply intimate second poetry collection, Ocean Vuong searches for life among the aftershock of his mother's death, embodying the paradox of sitting within grief while being determined to survive beyond it. Shifting through memory and in concert with the theme of his novel On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, Vuong contends with personal loss, the meaning of family, and the value of joy in a perennially fractured American spirit. Vivid, brave, propulsive, Vuong's poems circle fragmented lives to find both restoration as well as the epicenter of the break. It's very poetic. I don't read a lot of poetry, I think you can tell from my list as of this point, but I did think that if I was going to like anyone's poetry, it was probably going to be this specific author's poetry. And I was right. It was sad. It made me cry. It's very good. Some people handle grief beautifully well in stories and in books and in poetry, and some don't, in my opinion. But who am I to say how anyone deals with grief? It's just some things work for me and some things don't. This worked for me. So, if you're dealing with grief right now, probably don't pick it up. If you're not, pick it up. That's what I'll say about this. Now the next one I really wish I had on my shelf. It's called The Night Eater, She Eats the Night by Marjorie Liu, who did Monstrous, the fantasy comic that I love the most, okay? It is one of my favorite comics I've ever read. But this is her newest work. She did it with Sana Takeda, as she did everything else she's done. This one is a horror trilogy about two Chinese American twins named Millie and Billy who are having a tough time. On top of the multiple failures of their personal and professional lives, they're struggling to keep their restaurant afloat, family restaurant. Luckily, their parents, Ipo and Kyon, are in town for their annual visit. Having immigrated from Hong Kong before the twins were born, Ipo and Kyon have supported their children through thick and thin and are ready to lend a hand, but they're starting to wonder, has their support made Millie and Billy incapable of standing on their own? This is such a crazy ride. You don't expect it to go where it's going to go, and then it does, and it's super crazy. It is about the kids, but it's mostly about the parents, especially the mother. This is about the mother, okay? This is her story. And we do go in the past in Hong Kong back in, I think it's the 50s or 60s, something like that. And we learn a little bit of the origin of the mother's abilities, because she does have some, as well as the father and what his past was. I'm really looking forward to the next two. I don't know when they're being announced, but this is a fantastic start to a trilogy. Of course, incredible artwork, as Sana Takeda's artwork is. It's brilliant. She's one of my favorite illustrators. If you've read Monstrous, give this one a go. I think you'll like it. Now, in order to get into November, we must understand that I recently found the entire box set of Percy Jackson lying around in my house. I didn't know that I had these, okay? This was given to my sister by my cousin because she wanted to read all of the books, and then she read them, and then she just forgot to give them back. So I have them now. I told my cousin I have them, and he said, take them. They're yours. And I said, good. Not giving these back because, first of all, I love this box set. I love specifically this illustration of Percy Jackson, but yeah, I knew I wasn't going to give them back. We're going to see if I can pry out the first one, because these have gone in and out so many times that I don't even know if this is possible. Okay, here we go. So, back in November, I did read the first of the Percy Jackson series. Like, look at this illustration. This is classic, okay? This is very good. I love this stuff. I love Rick Riordan. I have been a Rick Riordan fan since I was a kid, okay? I was super big on these books, as well as the next ones and ones after that, okay? I loved all of them. I'm in the process still of rereading all of these. I've done the box set now. I read them mostly in November. I think I read 1 and 2 in November. So I read this one and Sea of Monsters. I haven't been reviewing them. I'm just going through them, and it's just a fun time. This is just picking up a middle grade from the past that I really missed and just wanted to reread. It holds up. It's great. It's fun. I love Percy. He is the real one, and I absolutely love anything like Greek, mythology themed. It's always a good time. Now, also in the month of November, I read 2 of the books that I'm going to think about for the rest of my life. Not to be dramatic or anything, but they're both 5-star books. One of them I gave 4.5 stars for reasons that will become clear, but these are both books that I will think about forever, starting with The Gilda Stories by Jewelle Gomez. Now, this is a vampire story, the first lesbian vampire story published in the United States about and featuring Black lesbian vampires as well as Native vampires. And this collection of stories is essentially following the life of a 200-year-old vampire named Gilda, and you get to see her time as she goes through her life at different time periods, experiencing America at its different points, and eventually you even get to the future, which is where it ends, I believe, in the year 2050. I would personally recommend it as an Afrofuturist vampire novel, and it's easily the best book I read in all of 2022, and I hope everybody reads it. And if this is the first time you're hearing about it, I'm so excited that I am the one telling you, because it is so good. Let me read my review for you that I wrote back then so I can really get back into it, because it's been a while. Not only is this the best vampire depiction I've ever read, it also calls for you to look within yourself and ask, what does community look like in the face of human-caused devastation? Which I think is one of the main theses. Is there a multiple for thesis? No. It's a thesis. Okay? For this book. Okay. Also, what would you do if given the chance at eternity? Both main questions, in my opinion. The story begins with a girl that grew up on a plantation and runs away, finding herself at a woman-run brothel and in the company of a pair of vampires that become her maternal figures. Now, while she is on the run, she is also on the run from her would-be R-worder. I don't know if I can say that word on YouTube, so I'm going to say R-worder, who she does while she is a kid, okay? She was kicking, okay? She was trying to survive, and she did, especially with the help of Gilda and her girlfriend slash lover slash long time. They're like wives, okay? They've been living together for a long time. Each chapter jumps forward across the 200 years in Gilda's life as we watch her adjust and adapt with each time period. So the maternal figure, her name was Gilda, but she decides to pass on, essentially. So Gilda, the young one, takes Gilda, the older one's name, essentially, and identity, if in a way. One thing that's very interesting about this book is that there's a deep connection to the land that's interwoven to the foundation of the story through Gilda's intimate relationship with the character of Bird of the Lakota people, and through the physical carrying of soil from her homeland everywhere that she goes. It's like a very important part of the book, and the way that the magic system kind of works in this. They also call the exchanging of human blood as like sharing of life, which I thought was interesting, because you do an equivalent exchange basically. So the vampire is getting the blood so that they can live, and the human is getting a positive memory or something so that it doesn't feel like it's like for nothing. It's an interesting concept. I've not read something like that before, so I thought it was really cool. Wanted to mention that. She meets various black queer women that shape her life along the way, and we get the most tender found family of vampires I've seen in a long time. One of my favorite aspects of the vampire elements in the story is how the blood is ingested, like I just described. And usually you're not exactly supposed to kill your victim, you just kind of leave them in a daze, but they'll like heal eventually. We do meet some violent vampires who don't really adhere to that, and we do meet vampires who are clearly from different areas of the world, which I thought was cool and interesting. I feel like there could be a crossover with that other vampire book I was talking about, Certain Dark Things. Like if there was like a modern retelling of both of these books, that could be really cool, because it would be like two different origin systems. Vampires are so cool. I love a good myth. I love a good myth, okay? Especially one that spans across the globe and has like some semblance of like familiarity in all of them. That's true for fairies, it's true for vampires, for werewolves, for dragons even. That's my favorite thing to deep dive into, I swear to you. Now this was originally written in 1991, I believe the first one, and then subsequent years it finished out, and then it was collected and then put into a book. There are predictions to 2020 which are scarily accurate for being predicted back in 1991, and then there's also 2050 predictions, because then it goes into the future, like way future. And I just think that this story has literally everything that you could ever want. For me, it's an instant classic. For a lot of people, it's an instant classic. A lot of people I talk to, this is a classic, and for good reason. I want it on my shelf, but I want to get one with like a really pretty cover or something like that. I don't know. This is a very good book. I gave it 5 stars. It's amazing. It's well written. It's well done, and all of the stories connect together really in an interesting way. I'm going to think about it forever. The next book I'm going to talk about is another R.F. Kuang book, but from a different, this is not a part of the series. This is Babel, an Arcane History, which follows 4 main characters who go to Oxford University in a fictional place called Babel, which is this building where they study translations and also do the silver working magic. In the year like 1828, you have one Chinese student, Robin Swift, who was orphaned by cholera in Canton, and brought to London by a mysterious professor named Lovell, who sucks and is the worst. He meets his roommate, Rami, who is a Muslim Indian character from Calcutta, and you meet Letty, who is a daughter of an admiral and is just the white person there. Then you meet Victoire, who is a Haitian French student who goes to Oxford and experiences a lot of interesting things in this novel. There's a lot of positive in this book, in my opinion. I think that it's a really cool dark academia book, and I think that it is critiquing a lot, and I loved it. I loved reading it. It was a positive experience for me, probably a 5-star experience for me. But I would say that, like, the complexity of the characters was lacking when it came to anyone who wasn't Robin. They kind of felt like they were meant to just represent their regions of the world in a way, which I think I understand the reason why she did that. There's a lot that you can put into a book without fully forming a character, and I think Kuang does that really well in a way. Like, not all of her characters, and I say this broadly across all of the books that she's written, are like fully fledged out. They almost feel like representative of an idea or of a subsect of people, and she does it artfully. I don't understand it because I usually hate that when anyone else does that. I'm like, make your characters 3-dimensional. She's the only one that doesn't do that, and it works. I don't know what to tell you, but it does. The only thing is that I think that there was a lot of frustration for me personally reading between Letty and Victoire's like relationship to each other. It was very annoying to have to see so much. There was so many microaggressions there, and there was so much that Victoire had to hold on to that she didn't tell anybody about. Not Robin, not Rami, that she was experiencing, and I hated it. Hated every second of it, honestly. But I understand why she did it. I just don't think that it was the best representation you could have seen. I also felt that Rami really fell flat. He's a character that you're supposed to fall in love with. He's a character that Robin himself, I believe, does fall in love with a little bit. I'm trying so hard to not spoil this next part, but like, Rami is meant to be a sort of tragic character for sure, and like, I have definitely seen characters who are Muslim and that are like represented by people who are not from the community, who create a caricature without fully understanding that there are some very harmful tropes that exist for Muslim men in literature and in media at large, and I think that Rami's character has all of it, and that was really, really frustrating for me to read. Even though I did love his character, I did love the way he was written, and it's still annoying. It's still very annoying because I think that Asian male characters fall into either two tropes, and it's always like the nerdy one who you feel is endearing and you want to root for, and the one who is like appealing both because they are smart and also because they are daring, and will always be the tragic character no matter what. They can't see a happy ending because the world was not made or built for them, and I think that's the two categories that Robin and Rami fall into. It's a trope, it's heavy, it's heavy-handed in this book for sure, and I wish I didn't have to see it, but I get it, I understand. So there's probably multiple reasons why I ended up giving this one a 4.5 stars, but it's a book I would recommend. I would recommend it over and over, but I think that there could have been more careful consideration done to the representation in these books, even though I believe Kuang did a lot of incredible research in this. It is very well done, and I found the footnotes to be a very fun inclusion. I've now read 2 books where footnotes were like an important part of the book, and I really loved it. I like things like that. I'm an academic soul at heart. I mean, I like that type of stuff. So I had a good experience with it. I would recommend it. I would. Okay, we finally got into December, which is when I read the rest of the Percy Jackson books. So I read the 3rd one, Titan's Curse, which is the one that like I didn't like the most out of all of them. I read the Battle of the Labyrinth. Actually, that's the one I didn't like the most, I just remembered. And then The Last Olympian. I mean, there's a lot of things that are missed when it comes to the Rick Riordan books, but like, they're middle grade fantasy books. What more could you want, really? I miss these characters. I was so happy to get back into it with them. I love these books. They're great. I'm now on the next books, which I don't know, the series name is just escaping me right now. The thing is that like, that main character, Jason Grace, yeah, it's been a while since I read that boy. I know that I don't like him that much. I'm gonna get through it though, because I need to read that so I can get to the Nico books later. That's a whole other thing. Now, the last book that I read in December was The Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno-Garcia. I finished that around like the 16th of December, so right smack dab in the middle of December. Very spooky, fun, definitely gothic read. I absolutely loved it. I believe I gave it 4 stars. Only because I wouldn't reread it, just because it was genuinely creepy to me. I don't like things that involve like miasma type thing, or like mold or whatever, and there's like a lot of that in like a way that's like trippy. There's some trippy elements of this book, and there's also just like a lot of like there is some SA in this. That does happen. It's something that I blanked out of my memory, but right now that I'm thinking about it, it's definitely there. But here's a quick rundown of what actually happened. After receiving a frantic letter from her newlywed cousin begging for someone to save her from a mysterious doom, Noemi Taboado heads to High Palace, a distant house in the Mexican countryside. She's not sure what she'll find there. Her cousin's husband, a handsome Englishman, is a stranger, and Noemi knows little about the region, but she does agree to go there and rescue her cousin because she has a good relationship with her, and she's like, I hope she's not going through it like crazy. Her letter was weird. Let me go figure out what the hell's going on. So she goes there to this crazy house, and crazy things happen to her. It's a lot. There's a lot of doom, and there's a lot of like white supremacy that goes on, and weird mold stuff. That's the best I can give you. I really adore the writing style. I think that Sylvia Moreno-Garcia has a gift for doing these type of stories that are like a little bit creepy and a little bit off-putting, but it's like there's also a lot of beautiful elements to it as well. I had a good time reading it. I thought it was really good. I would definitely highly recommend it. I did it as an audiobook, and I liked it. It was about like 10 hours or so. So I would say like it's a medium-paced book for me anyway, but it was really good. Hello, I just went on a very long break so I could get some food. Filming takes a long time. I've been doing this for a couple hours now. The last two that I want to talk about, one is a book and one is a comic. I read these in January. I was on a huge trip in January actually of this year. I went to Saudi Arabia and went to Umrah with my family, which is a religious thing that we Muslims do sometimes if we can do it and are fortunate enough to do that in our lifetimes. And my parents have been many times, but this is the first time they took me and my sisters, so we all went together. And then we went to Turkey, and I was there for around 3 weeks, and it was beautiful and amazing, and I would totally go back. But right when I did get back, I saw that I had been approved for a lot of arcs, so I think that's kind of what kicked into gear the reading for just 2023 in general. I'm going to get into those in the next video. That's going to be my spring reading roundup, which will honestly could be longer. I don't know. But anyway, let's talk about what I read in January. I was reading an audiobook. This is one that I got because I am a bookseller, so I got this one on Libro. We get free books every month for whatever is coming out, and I got Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabriel Zevin just a little bit before, but I hadn't read it before that, so I read it in January. Basically anytime I was taking a flight, because we went on a few different planes, so anytime I was on a flight I was reading that book, and I finally finished it the last week of my trip when things were much calmer. This book is about Sam Mazer and Sadie Green and their relationship as it develops over time. So on a bitter cold day in December of his junior year at Harvard, Sam Mazer exits a subway car and sees amid the horde of people on the platform Sadie Green. He calls her name. For a moment she pretends she hasn't heard him, but then she turns and a game begins. A legendary collaboration that will launch them to stardom. They borrow money, beg favors, and before even graduating college, they have created their first blockbuster, Ichigo, a game where players can escape the confines of a body and the betrayals of the heart, and where death means nothing more than a chance to restart and play again. This is a story of the perfect world Sam and Sadie build, the imperfect world they live in, and everything that comes after success. Money, fame, duplicity, tragedy. Spans 30 years from Cambridge, Massachusetts to Venice Beach, California. This book is phenomenal. It really is. It's one of those where I understand why it ended up on so many book lists, because it's just very well written, it's very well done. It spans time in a way that's like very grounded, because you get to see different like events that you could see make sense if these were real people who were real game developers who were really making a game during the time period they were making it. There's some tragedy in the book too. There is talk of mental illness as well as like physical illnesses, and there's a lot of hospital visits in this. That is actually how Sadie and Sam first meet. There's disability representation in this, and there's just so much that happens. I do recommend it if you've never picked it up. It is one of those books that like you think about for a long time, and I was thinking about it for quite a long time after I finished it. Probably will for a while, which is why I give it 5 stars, because I probably am going to reread this book, which, I mean, it surprised me completely. I didn't think I was going to like it because I don't usually like a contemporary book, but here we are. I was really into it. The next one that I read was one of the first arcs I read on NetGalley, and it was My Life Among Humans by Jed M. McGowan. This was published this year, and I basically read it in one sitting. It's like this comic about a nameless alien data compiler that comes to Earth to study humans, sets up shop on the outskirts of a small desert community in North America, working under forced labor, must watch humans in complete secrecy while sending reports to its manager back home using spore-like technology. So the alien quickly gets interest into this family that they randomly decided to like investigate and like watch, and eventually is found out and doesn't do their job well, and it ends up a whole mess. A whole thing happens. It was like a fine comic. Like, I gave it 3 stars because I read the whole thing, but I don't think I would have recommended it to anybody or picked it up again. But it was like just fine. Just a comic. That one was an annoying book. But all the rest of the books that I read in February were very good. I read 8 in total. One of them was a comic. 4, 5. I read a lot of comics. February is a good comic month. Starting with what I finished on February 2nd. Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I gave it 4 stars because I don't think I would reread it, but I did read it in one sitting. It was, like I said earlier with R.F. Kuang characters, I do believe that she has a gift for writing stories where clearly she is trying to have a meta commentary on something, and she knows that people in publishing are currently having that conversation. She does call out a lot of different things in this book. The time that she was like announcing it was also the time that the HarperCollins strike was going on, which is how she publishes all of her books, is through HarperCollins. But essentially, if you've never heard of it, like what this is about, this book is about Juniper Song, who is not who she says she is, and she didn't write the book that she claimed that she wrote, and she most certainly is not an Asian American, and this book is just like this very chilling, very funny look at what this person does, this white girl who genuinely decides to steal a manuscript and thinks it's going to end well for her. It's a choice. It's a choice. She steals it from Athena Liu, who is a very popular, very talented Asian American author, and she dies at the very beginning of the book and has been working on a manuscript for a while that she has kept under wraps, and June figures out about it. June Hayward is her actual name. Her author name is Juniper Song. But she hears about it, and she takes it, and you kind of see her slowly descend into more and more nonsense as she makes more and more decisions that just don't make any sense at all to any logical person. But she really convinced herself that she was doing something when she took this manuscript, made it her own, and sold it off as a thing that she did. There's a lot of white guilt in it. There is a lot about the whiteness in publishing. There is a lot about gatekeeping going on in this, and there's a lot about like who gets to tell which story and why and how can it be harmful, how can it be helpful, where's cultural appreciation versus appropriation, like where are those lines. So this book is all of those things. I think that it's going to end up on a lot of people's favorites for May. It's a very good book. It is a very weird book, and again, the characters do come across as caricatures. Like, I don't think I would ever meet a human like June Hayward, but I think that R.F. Kuang probably has met people who fall into alignment with a June Hayward type, and that is saying something. So it's a good book. Is it a great book? No. Is it my favorite R.F. Kuang book? Absolutely not. But I do recommend reading it. Now, the next book I have for you is so crazy how it got to me. I got an email randomly from Penguin Random House. I didn't know they had my email. And they emailed me asking if I wanted to review a memoir that was going to be coming out this year called Hijab Butch Blues by Lamia H. And if I would want to post it. I don't even think they asked me to post a review about it, actually. They didn't. They just asked if they could send it to me. That's it. And I said, absolutely you can. Not only did they do that, they sent me the uncorrected proof, and they sent me the finished bound hardcover. That was very nice of them. I did read it this way because I prefer a paperback, but this is not a very annoying hardcover, I will say, because it's a very slim, thin, you know, not too crazy book. This is such a good memoir. I literally tell everybody in my life to read it. This is an amazing lesbian memoir, and this is just an amazing coming-of-age Muslim memoir for sure. I gave it 4.5 stars only because it's too emotional for me to reread personally. But this is about a queer hijabi Muslim immigrant, and she basically draws strength and hope from stories in the Quran in this, like, throughout the memoir. So when she's 14 years old, that's when she first realizes that she has attraction to women. First crush was like her teacher, and she covers it up. She doesn't know how to name it, and she tries to become like the overachiever, the class clown, in order to like get all like focus away from her. I related a lot to that struggle, especially like being a 14-year-old not knowing what a crush was when it wasn't on a boy. I fully understood her character. I really loved it. Like reading this book, I felt seen by it. Lamia is such a endearing character, and the fact that she used stories in the Quran to talk about her experience is something that not enough people are talking about when it comes to this book, because genuinely a lot of homophobic Muslim people who talk about queer communities, like specifically Muslim queer communities, do not acknowledge the fact that they exist because they think that they do not exist within the Quran at all. I think it falls a lot into alignment with the way a lot of queer homophobic Christians act, and I'm sure in other denominations as well. But I think it's just beautiful that she decides to use quotes in the Quran to talk about the strength that she got from it, and how she is still a very religious person, and she is still fully a queer person as well. Like, I thought it was beautiful. This memoir is amazing. I mean, thank you so much to Penguin Random House for sending it to me, because this book has become very important to my life. Like, this has become a very important book for me, and I talk about it to everyone all the time. Now, the next one to talk about is Shubaik Lubaik by Dina Muhammad. This is a comic that is read from right to left. Wait, am I right about that? Right to left. Whichever way is backwards. Oh my god. Directions. It is originally translated from Arabic, so that is the direction that you read it in. It is by an Egyptian comic artist, and it is a huge fantasy story that is just so good. Oh my, I gave this 5 stars. This is my favorite fantasy comic that came out this year, hands down. Absolutely. Now, Shubaik Lubaik is a fairy tale rhyme that means your wish is my command in Arabic, and it is the story of 3 people who are navigating a world where wishes are literally for sale. The more expensive a wish, the more power it has, and the least expensive it is, the more dangerous it can be. Some of my main characters are Shogri, who runs an unassuming kiosk in Cairo, who happens to have 3 of these wishes that they're trying to desperately to give away because he believes using wishes is haram, which, like, that is such an uncle thing that he's like, I'm never going to use these even if it could help me. This is not it. But also, very interesting to include Islam into this story. I absolutely appreciated it. We have Noor, who's like a university student going through it and is like depressed and stuff, and gets one of the wishes and like literally just has no idea how to use it. And then we have Aziza, who is, she's widowed. I don't think she has any kids. She's widowed, and she is in a pretty dire situation and actually genuinely works really hard to get that wish. This is Aziza right there. And you see the ways that it like these wishes literally interfere with these people's lives. It's crazy. It's so beautifully done. I genuinely loved it so much. There's dragons in it too. There's like full color pages and a lot of like really just great spreads. I mean, this is a beautiful comic. It's amazing. I hope more people pick it up as more people hear about it. Dina Muhammad is an illustrator and comic artist to look at and look for. Her work is just phenomenal. The next comic I read in February was called Taproot by Keezy Young, which is like this young queer comic about a gardener and a ghost, basically. Every time I see a story, like a comic that centers around a young person and a ghost, I will read it immediately. I have such love for vampire stories and ghost stories. I think you will see that that's a common thing for me. Unfortunately, this one fell flat. I gave it 3 stars, but I thought it was like cute. Blue, he's having a hard time moving on, and he's in love with his best friend, but he's also dead. And Amal, he can see ghosts, which leaves Blue to freely haunt him to his heart's content. So it's like he's haunting him, but he's okay with it because they both love each other. But one of them is dead. Sad. I thought it was really cute and adorable, but I don't think I would read it again. It just was like, just fine. Nothing bad, nothing good. 3 stars. I may be running out of time to record, so I'll try to be fast about this, but this is the next one. It's called In Limbo by Deb JJ Lee, one of my favorite illustrators. Absolutely loved this memoir. It's very good. I have 5-star rating over on Storygraph that you can read, but essentially this is a story of like healing childhood trauma and also just like parental trauma, and also just like growing up Korean American in a world that's like very brutal, because she did grow up in a white community. Also, she goes by she, they pronouns, just so you know that. And I did get this from NetGalley, and I bought the physical one the second that I could. It's beautiful, it's amazing. One thing that I really like about it is that they include like photographs in there as well, and also like the style is very unique. It has this blue tone to it and like this texture, and you can tell that this is made by an illustrator. Some comics are not made by illustrators. You can tell that as well. This one is, and it's so well done. Here's a little description that I'm just going to read for you. Ever since Deborah Lee's family emigrated from South Korea to the United States, she's felt her otherness. For a while, her English wasn't perfect. Her teacher couldn't pronounce her Korean name. Her face and her eyes, especially her eyes, felt wrong. In high school, everything gets harder. Friendships change and end. She falls behind in class, and fights with her mom escalate. Caught in limbo with nowhere safe to go, Deb finds her mental health plummeting, resulting in a attempt. But Deb is resilient and slowly heals with the help of art and self-care, guiding her to a deeper understanding of her heritage and herself. It's beautiful, it's brutal, it's amazing. Definitely my favorite graphic memoir that came out this year. The next one is called Codex Black, A Fire Among Clouds. I got this as an ARC actually from work. So all of the ones I'm mentioning right now are ARCs, but this one I gave 4 stars. Navigating through monstrous mysteries and the will of the gods with 2 young extraordinary adventurers in 15th century Mesoamerica as they search for a missing father. The girl's missing father right here. She also has a poncho that doubles as a protective god. She's also incredibly badass, and this character, he is so endearing. Both of them are really cute, and this is such a cool, interesting, very original indigenous storytelling, and like, I recommend it. It's very, very good. Now, I also read Bitter by Akwaeke Emezi, which I have Pet by Akwaeke Emezi on my shelf over there. I don't have this one. I did read it through my library app, and it's so good. Now, this one follows the main character and Pet's mother, Bitter. So the main character's name was Jam, and this is Bitter. All of the character names have to do with like who they are kind of as people. There's a lot of very interesting kind of utopian vibes that go on in this story, but there's also a lot of very brutal truths as well. So this one follows Bitter as she attends Eucalyptus, which is a special school where she can focus on her painting and be surrounded by other creative teens. It's all for people who have nowhere else to go. But on the outside, the streets are kind of filled with protests and a lot of revolts happening against the powers that be in Lucille, their small town. And while Bitter's instinct is to stay safe inside Eucalyptus, where she is protected, she does get thrust into a world that's much bigger than herself when she learns that she has the ability to make her paintings come to life. And those paintings that do come to life, they change everything for Bitter and change everything for this world. It is such a beautiful commentary on restorative justice and just on justice in general. This is seriously one of the best books I've ever read. I think it's just as good as Pet, if not better. I love both of them so much, and I love Akwaeke Emezi's work. Highly recommend reading both. I loved the audiobook experience for this one. Okay, and that is going to be it for this portion of the video. You will see me next for the outro. Hello there, you have made it to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Again, all of the books are below, as well as timestamps if you want to go back and rewatch anything that I was talking about. I also have reviews on most of these books over on Storygraph. If you want to follow me there, you absolutely can. You can friend me there, however that system works. I'm not entirely sure I understand it myself, and I spend almost every day on there. If you would like to check out my bookshop.org page to support me and also grab one of these books that you saw in the video, I have a link below. It is an affiliate link. I do get a small commission from that, and it is greatly appreciated if you do use that. I also have links to my social media pages and my Patreon, which is a baby right now and absolutely new, and I love it very much. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I have a few tiers going on right now. A support tier, which is $3 a month, and a writing tier, which is $5 a month. You can see the breakdowns over there on Patreon. And also if you just wanted to leave me a tip, there's also a link for that too. But also, just watching this video, I do appreciate so very much. Just the fact that you clicked here and you watched all the way through to the end means the world to me. Please like this video and subscribe. I don't have anything else for you today. I will catch you guys in the next one, which will be a even longer video. Be prepared for that. It's going to be a whole thing, and you can get some hints about what that's going to be over on Patreon. Okay, that is all for me today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for subscribing, for liking the video, for watching. I'm gonna say that so many times. I have to figure out a better way to do this. Okay, bye.